Listen up, Rangers, over the HS. My name's Steve, and today we will be working on this guy. The game plan is we're going to make him into the burning Godzilla that you've seen at the end of the film. So he's going to be a lot of oranges, yellow, dark reds, browns for the scaling here. That's pretty much about it. Should be pretty basic because we've already done one of these. Well, style of figures. This is actually the bootleg we're going to be doing the repaint on. Now, I'd prefer to be doing this with the regular MonsterArts because details are a little crisper. Don't know how if you guys can see it well, but this is pretty darn smooth. That and we've gone over before, but the eye is a bit of a hot mess on this figure. So, I'm going to be painting it. I'm going to be trying something else because usually I primer these things beforehand. But with the last MonsterArts video and then actually testing on a few other figures, just airbrushing some light gray on here actually works pretty well from what I've seen. It helps to make the paint stick. But the reason why you'd be wanting to use a light paint color is so that the undertones be super bright as well. What I'm going to mess around with though is I got a little bit of hotter colors. So I'm going to try some of the like brighter oranges on top of the darker and then see if that works, because kind of want to make this look good but also be a little bit not as time consuming for the most part. So I'm going to be testing that out on this guy, and my buddy Aaron that loaned me this figure actually wants me to try to fix the eye here, which is going to be the complicated part. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to show you guys because I don't sculpt too often, but a lot of this for me is going to be just removing the excess plastic that's on here, or at least what they had from the sculpt, while still trying to keep this eyebrow intact, and then possibly using some epoxy putty, just like a little dab of it to make the eye, to try to replicate this side on this one. First and foremost, I'm going to test and see if I could just use these colors on here without having to primer it. Just realized my AC kicked on, so I'm going to go over this part again. But with the way they did the paint on here, it doesn't look like there's a lot of gloss on it. And you can even see in certain sections here, like the paint's already being rubbed off, and you kind of see where like they stopped painting it, where the joints are. So a lot of this hasn't really been cleared anyways, so it's pretty easy to apply the paint on. I was pretty much just filling in the layers to see how it was going to go and to see if I even need to airbrush. Also realized when painting this, if you're looking at the images on the actual movie, I actually loaded up on my phone here. He's actually like a really bright, like vibrant red. A lot of the toys I see are always like yellow. So it's essentially like going like, hey, let's see, make sure the paint applies first before I even get into it. Looks like it's going to apply pretty well. But anyways, if you guys wanted to see what bootleg Godzilla looks like torn apart, here's the stuff. I'm going to save the tail for last. But for the most part, the only real thing I notice is you'll get a couple of like mix-mash color joints in certain sections. The biggest issue though is I noticed the knee joints are some hot garbage. See if I can move the light a little bit so you guys can see a little better. But like this side's a little better, but they pop off real easy. Like there's not really much holding these things in together outside of the actual knee. So do be careful if you guys do decide to tear one of these apart to repaint. That's going to be an issue. But now I gotta go find some paint so I can get this to actually be the right coloring, and then we'll go back to doing all this. Alright, so I finally figured out a technique that I do like. Already done the body. I'll show you guys that because I actually got it clear coating right now. To protect the paint job, hopefully, anyways. But I will demonstrate, starting with the limbs, on how I've been doing my painting process. Now, if you guys don't have a airbrush, like so, I've been using this, and what I'm doing is I mix my own fluorescent paint, spray it over once, and then I've been going over dabbing a little bit of gloss white that I've thinned down, and then going back over it again with this. But with this part, I just been doing a brush For this, I've been using like a little dabby brush. It doesn't really matter, but for this, like I know it gets into the nooks and crannies. I've just been like daddying it around with the white. If you wanted to do this without an airbrush, this is actually the best way I'd recommend it. I can show you guys on a small part because like the detailing isn't going to be as important. So I guess I could show you guys with a little hand here. It's the best thing to do. Find something to be able to prop your hand up with. I got some Q-tips around here without the hand on. Okay, actually just get the fuzz part. I need it to kind of, there we go. Need to kind of stick. So what you do, take a little bit of thin. What this is, I just took some like, it's like $1 gloss paint. It's this one in particular. Just thinned it down 50-50. So you can either use water or paint thinner. But you use half of what you're going to use for your gloss white, half of what you're going to use for your thinner. Mix it in a bottle. But this, you just dab it all around. You're just going to want to cover your hand here. It's looking like I got a little bit too much paint on this. So rinse that off. Clean up the brush. Move a little bit. That looks about right. And then, because I am a super impatient person, we use the hair dryer to dry it. Do it for about like 30 seconds to a minute. The material for the bootleg here is kind of soft, so you will notice it gets kind of squishy. But essentially what I'm doing here is just kind of filling in the nooks and crannies a little bit with some brighter coloring. Doing this kind of bypasses the use of a primer because, again, like I pointed out at the beginning of the video, they didn't clear this thing very well. So the paint sticks to it pretty well. The water on paint, not so much, but even like when I was airbrushing it, I didn't really notice any problems. Did the same thing I did with the gloss coat, but this is actually the stuff I've been actually using for airbrushing. But if you don't, you can just do it this way too. Just dab it on. And the reason why I do a white on the base coat and then go over top of it with this is just so the coloring is a little brighter. That, and when you dry it with the hair dryer, it gives you a lot of different texturings, especially if you don't put it on perfect. Which is kind of what I want because it gives you a little bit of like light orange, some white, and some darker oranges here and there. And it gives it a little bit more of a fiery effect once you cover it up. Again, hair dry for about 30 seconds. Here's how the hand looks. And then I'm using a Tuscan red for the dry brushing. And you just take, you guys can see it. Raise it up a little bit. Just using the brush, dipping a little bit, wiping the majority of it off on the brush. And then I use this kind of add more paint to it. Then you just lightly go over the top of the scales. Plus a little bit of the red too will get mixed in with some of the oranges here and there, so again it'll darken some of the sections, lighten some of the sections. You don't want to go too heavy on the red, but you just want to make sure that all the scales and the important bits are getting covered up. Because doing it this way too, some of the only problem with doing this instead of using the airbrush is some of the green's going to show up a little bit from the under section, so that's why you want to kind of make sure you're covering everything very nicely. But what's kind of nice though still is it gives it that like rock kind of look to it. Gives it more of like a molten kind of appearance, which I guess is more Rodin-esque. Still works for the burning look though. But this is essentially how you would do it if you didn't have an airbrush. The only step I would add to this is if you guys have the airbrush is to go over the entirety of the hand with this first. And then do what I just did. But when I do that way, I don't go as quite as heavy on the white. I just do little smatters of white here and there just to brighten up certain sections. Don't quite as go as ham. So I'm going to go through, airbrush the stuff. Because you guys see me, if you guys haven't seen some of the Jurassic Park videos, I show you in the, especially the one, I'll have a card here. I airbrushed in that one. So you guys can kind of follow that if you guys have never airbrushed before. But for this, like you can almost just use spray paint. It's not like I'm doing anything super technical. But you just want to make sure you just coat the entire hand. But next, start going through the rest of the body bits, and then we'll start assembly. Alright, so real quick, just wanted to show you guys him assembled this far as of right now. This is with painting, clear over top of it. I'll show you guys the rest. Also, finished up some of the hands and a few other things. Next, I did mention airbrushing. This is a new day of filming. I'm actually going to save that for later. I'll airbrush these, pretty much all the larger bits. The tail sections, though, I'm actually going to do what we just did previously, with me demonstrating on the hands, I do believe it was, from the previous day. What I'm going to be doing is working on the tail today, and the tail, I won't be airbrushing any of this. It's just going to be exactly what I did with those, because it's smaller bits, so, and some of the detailing is not very consistent on this. So I don't really see much of a point in airbrushing, and it's just, again, smaller bits, so for the most part, what I was doing previously would be a pretty good technique anyways. So that being said, I'm just going to let this run for a little bit, and then we'll probably save the airbrushing for tomorrow, or later in the video as it will. Oh, one thing I noticed is actually numbers on the inside here, so you don't quite have to pay attention. That's nice. Again, just want to kind of reiterate what I'm doing here. Just splattering it on. A little thicker in certain sections than others. So it gives it a little bit more color variety. Because parts with a little bit more of the white on it starting to turn a little bit yellow. Some of the parts I'm not really covering that well. It's going to still kind of show up as a white with the red over top of it. And then some of the parts are going to be a nice dark yellow. But then afterwards, once we get all this assembled, this will also light up under a black light too, so that'll be sweet. Hopefully, anyways. Kind of like what I did with the last Godzilla, because I know it's not going to be the brightest, as I kind of want it to look like it's still exploding, but you can't really do that without a light up effect. But with fluorescent paints and the right lighting, it should still look sweet. Tail's all done. What I didn't show you guys after painting it was just assembly and spraying it with some Mod Podge. Well, sorry, the reverse order. I sprayed with Mod Podge and then assembled. I sprayed it twice just to make sure we got enough coverage on it. So when you articulate it, as you guys can at least see right now, I'll show you guys what the final product looks like at the actual review table. But it's not scuffing right now, which is nice. Once I get the thing fully assembled, I'll probably spray it one more time just to be on the safe side. But that's mainly because there's a certain few sections here I might touch back up a little bit with a little more dry brushing. Like some of the back of the little Spikes on here don't look quite as good as I want them to. Other than that, though, like the rest of the main body is looking good. So we got our Snakezilla. just as a joke for Aaron, just fill this up with some putty, spray it, call it a day, just send up a snake. But promise we'll get it figured out. So what I got down now, and actually I got to move this guy out this side because I don't want to actually spray it. For this stuff, I'll show you guys what I was doing with the airbrush here. Which, I know a few of you guys asked. I just use a Pash. What it's called? Oh man, my AC's kicking on. Alright, we gotta be quick. But I'm just gonna be spraying this stuff with the fluorescent orange here. Oh, it's not going off. It's actually draining. That's what it's doing. Be hearing noise in the background. But we're gonna spray it with the fluorescent orange. Dab a little bit of white on it to brighten certain sections up. Go back over it one more time. Just maybe spray it. Guess it depends how I feel. Probably gonna spray it instead of using the brush. But other than that, that's pretty much about it. And then just gonna be dry brushing again. This time I'll show you guys what I do when I do the clear coating. Hopefully it should be bright enough out at that point. And then go over assembly and show you guys how I've been reattaching it anyways. And then pretty much go over it after that. Because for the most part, for each of the joints, I just heat it with the hairdryer, push it back in. Because this material, they use something a little different than the MonsterArts. So when you heat it up, it gets super, super soft. Kind of like a NECA in that regards. So once you heat it up, it's really easy just to push these things back on. But alright, gonna get the painting, and then we'll move on to the next steps after that.
You go potty, I got a film to do. Got the videos to juice. Hey you. Anyways, back to what I'm doing here. Actually I grabbed the wrong one. There we go. Alright, so what I got here is some matte Mod Podge clear acrylic sealer. Now you're just going to spray your parts. If you want to be a little more professional about this, what you can do is actually put these on little pegs and have them hanging up, and then it gives you a little bit more clear coverage. I imagine most people, though, if they were doing this, probably don't have that set up, or maybe don't have time to do that. For a lot of this, as long as you like get the parts to stand up on the most of them, what you can do is you just spray it. Then once you're done, you pretty much just flip it over, give it a, well, sorry, let it dry, flip it over, then spray it again, and that should give you enough coverage to be able to pretty much do what you need to do. And again, like I said, after I do all this, I'm going to reassemble it and spray it one more time just to be on the safe side. But other than that, you just shake the can up real good. It's a little hard to do this while filming, but you just make sure you get a good coverage. Get around everything. a little liberal. Now, I'm gonna give this like 20 minutes just to dry, because this stuff dries pretty quick. And then I'll flip the stuff over and do it one more time before we assemble.
Alright, so next we have assembly, which again, pretty much straightforward. Once I figure out which joint goes to which, anyways. A lot of this, there's like numbers on the inside, you just kind of match them up. But like, this is your knee joint. Top of the knee. There's a 29? Is there 29 on one of these? I think actually adding paint to this would actually make the numbers pop out a little better. You'd be mistaken. Also dealing with these crappy joints. Okay, so fat part, littler part of the bend is towards the top. The larger plates coming down towards the side, and then the oblong protrusions. So now what you do, heat this up. Make sure not to burn your fingers. It's a little pliable now. So this just hopefully slides in. Check, make sure that it looks alright. One thing I do recommend when you guys are actually planning on making one of these, if you want to repaint it, what have you, make sure to take a picture so you know which ones line up with which. I was trying to be quick about this one, so I just kind of did this all willy-nilly. So that's 31. So these are the lower bits of the legs. So this is the next section. It's just trying to figure out which one's the actual, because there's 24. Okay, I see. I found the 24. It's on the thing here. So this, we'll heat up the top bit. Pop it in. And mainly I'm doing this just to make sure everything just goes back on smoothly. And then you just kind of wash, rinse, repeat. You just keep hitting up the joint, pop it in until you get it fully assembled. And once you figure out which part's which, and then we'll have it fully assembled. All put together. Which, here it is next to the original release as MonsterArts, or, sorry, the authentic release. Just so you guys get a gauge on pretty much the color difference that I've done between the two of them. But you can see it's pretty much complete repainting, just to go over this guy a little more closely. So like you guys saw me a little bit here and there with the putting together of this guy. I actually shaved out his eyes with the X-Acto blades to even it out, because this side I actually made him an eyebrow, which he originally didn't have, because I had that whole soldering iron jamming in his eye. So carved out an eye for this side, painted it up white. Well, kind of like whites, yellows, and oranges. Same with this eye over here. I actually carved that out too, just to make it look even. Because when you see it in the film, it's pretty much just a bright, like, white-red light. So it's kind of what I was trying to replicate there. But for the rest of the kaiju here, you have what I used for the undertone was a fluorescent orange paint. With a little bit of white here and there, just to kind of lighten it up, and then went back over with the orange to give it a little bit more of like a yellow color over top of it, so you'll see some sections a little bit brighter than others. Again, trying to replicate the overall look in the film, because it wasn't very consistent in the film when you look at it, because some sections would be like a bright red, you got yellows, you got your whites, so more or less trying to replicate with that, but did a, I think it was a Tuscan red, dry wash over top of it, pretty much darkest red I can get without making it look more black. Over top of the kaiju, again, had to individually paint each of these sections here for the tails. Well, just everything in general, which is time consuming, but with the method I use, it's not super hard to paint though. It just takes a while because you gotta literally do each individual section. Same with the toes, didn't really do anything fancy there. Just kept them the same color as we did for the rest of the body here. Claws, more or less the same. But what's kind of nice too is, with the way it was originally colored, you didn't really get a lot of some of the sections that looked really hindering in the detail. Like for the mold that they used, it didn't really catch that well. like for this section here. But after painting it, kind of livens it up a little bit more. I think the other side, you get a few of those there too, like these sections here. Doing this kind of paint job gives you a little bit more differentiation in the detailing. Same with like the forearm here, which you guys will see in a second with the fluorescent. These are the parts that had a hard time kind of holding the orange in, but for the most part, it still works pretty well because again, in the film, it's not super consistent. Also, for the most part, with the articulation, I don't really see any rubbing happening, which is the reason why we use the Mod Podge over it to begin with. Gotta be careful though, like it will scrape off if you like yank on stuff. This is the section leg on this guy I'd probably worry about the most, because this is just gonna come into contact when you're moving it around. So, if you guys are going to want to be doing this at home, this is the section you might have to worry about the most. And maybe something like even like maybe file it down a little bit, just so that there's a little bit extra space there. But for the most part, I haven't really noticed too many problems anywhere else on this guy. But personally for me, I think this guy turned out pretty freaking fantastic. Also mentioning with the fluorescent paint, if you guys get a black light, also if you guys can see it, but when you get a black light on it, he illuminates. Which is kind of what I was more or less going for with this look anyways. Because once you get a black light on it with the fluorescent orange, it kind of gives it that more exploding look like you see in the film. So you get a little bit of a variety, depending on how you want to pose it. But yeah, pretty impressed with the way that turned out. Like certain sections, again, maybe could have been a little bit cleaner in some of the spots, but a lot of that just has to do with the amount of detail in the actual mold from the bootleg. Had some issues in a couple of spots, so it's not consistent. But then again, kind of matches the film again, because it's not going to be the same amount of lighting in certain sections of the kaiju as there would be in other spots. But anyways, that's it for this video. I will be doing a couple more here in the near future. Aaron that we did this figure for actually had a request for us to do an Indominus Rex 2 for a commission, so we'll be doing that one. But the official next one is touching up the bootleg Showa Ghidorah. We'll be making that one look a little bit more movie accurate than what it originally was. So definitely look out for that. And if you guys are interested in doing one of these yourselves, let us know on our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, you name it. Would love to see what you guys have done. And help us defeat those kaijus by hitting the like button, subscribe, become a ranger today. See you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.